August 13th, 2024. Well, the Harris campaign seems to be getting a lot of uh, attention lately, and the press seems to be just agog over her greatness or something. However, I believe that there's some evidence that perhaps the Harris, spur, run is maybe starting to actually slow down a little bit. For instance, I'm just noticing on the Real Clear Politics average, um, she came down a tenth, and the reason was because the value of the new morning consult poll came down at 1 point from where it was from 4 to 3. And by the way, that's a poll advantage for her. That's a poll I don't trust very much, anyhow. But even one of the favorable polls is starting to, for her, has fallen off. So my guess is that also the latest Rasmussen has Trump up 5 points now, and while you might say that's a bit on the Republican side, well, some of these other polls are pretty much on the Democrat side. For instance, a lot of the averages for the various statewide races, the state by state swing state races, you're having a whole bunch of New York Times Siena polls have come out with favorable, Harris up 4 points and stuff like that in these states, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If the national average is somewhere around less than 1% advantage for her, that the swing states would be up more than that. You'd think quite the contrary. The states that are clearly in the Democrat category would be more in play. So I'm very skeptical of that particular poll, particularly given that the New York Times has not exactly been an honest reporter. After all, they were supporting that Biden was okay until they decided he wasn't okay. Then after they got rid of that, instead of Harris being a problem for him, now she's great. So I think that's, you can kind of see how this is kind of going. And some of these swing states, I know that Trafalgar's come out with a set of polls, and they're usually pretty accurate. And they're continuing to show a Trump lead in the ones where they've polled so far. So I think things have tightened up from the worst that Biden had. It's back to kind of like where it was before Biden was getting ousted, so to speak. So I think I wouldn't, panic at this point. I think in anything, I think that you should kind of tune out the media a little bit and hang in there, because I think things will get a little bit better. Remember, another thing that I believe in a lot of ways Harris has peaked a little bit too soon. And the reason I would say that is because she's getting, the kind of bump right now that you get when somebody traditionally just had their convention and was formally nominated. But it's a foregone conclusion when the Democratic convention comes around in the week of the 19th, coming up, next week. We're going to have, given the situation in the Middle East, you're going to have a lot of pro-Hamas type protesters showing up in Chicago at the convention outside protesting, and at the same time, of course, the administration is sending more forces into the Middle East conflict, at least not necessarily actively, but they're moving one of the old Ohio class submarines that's equipped with cruise missiles, and they're moving it into the area, I think. So at any rate, we'll have to see how that goes. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. Looking for more subscriptions, and of course you can click the bell for notifications. There's the latest Harris move of adopting Trump's no taxes on tips. It's kind of funny when they were pretty much, we're going to condemn it, but now they've decided they're going to copy it. But the main point I think that needs to be brought out in all these things, and in fact, I think the current situation, if the Trump campaign figures out how to do it, which I think part of the problem they're having is they really weren't running a real campaign until Biden dropped out of the race, because they thought that basically the whole race was Biden is too incompetent to be president, therefore we'll win. And now that Biden's not the candidate, Well, Harris really is probably too incompetent to be president as well, but apparently there's a little bit of a, you know, this sort of bandwagon technique going on. But I think that this is a perfect opportunity, since she isn't taking any real positions. I would take the attitude that things that they're given the media on background, I would simply start stating what her positions really are based on her historic statements, and point out that even if she says something different between now and the election day, she'll probably revert if she were to be in office. So, and we know that she's basically dishonest because she was covering for Biden's infirmities until the situation changed and she became the presumptive nominee. So I think there's plenty to work with there. Um, and if we can get Trump to get off of his ongoing statements about what he did in the past and focus on what we need to do in the future, which I think he's getting a little bit more like that now. But I would suggest also, of course, that they adopt some kind of like message of the week approach. It worked very good for George H.W. Bush back in the olden days, which is to each come up with some kind of a statement to make in every presentation you make, so that everybody gets the message. In fact, with Trump, he may not have to say it that much, because if he says anything, people do pick up and just put out his position, because I think he's doing pretty good overall. And like you say, that then when we get to the debates, I mean, that'll be very interesting to see how she performs in the debate. I guess it looks like she's accepted just the ABC debate, and so far I have my doubts she's going to accept a Fox debate. Although maybe she should, really. Well, maybe not actually. But Fox has a tendency to be not as pro Republican as in the news section as people might think. I mean, for instance, Fox political polls often tend to skew a little bit more toward the Democrat side than you would think they would. Um, I'm just saying historically. I mean, I think that they're not really. Let's put it that way. That bias toward the Republicans in their polling or their general news. I mean, if you look at Special Report, that is hardly partisan. That's pretty objective news. Maybe it bends over a little bit too much to the Democrat side, but my taste. So anyhow, that's kind of the way I see the race here. Don't give up. Continue to, if you have the money, contribute to the Trump campaign. Contribute to your local Senate, or if you have a competitive House race, that. And I think the National Republican Senate Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee are always good places to contribute, because, well, I mean, the more you try to contribute to individual candidates, the more people just keep throwing snail mail at you and wasting the money you actually contributed. I wish they wouldn't do that. But anyhow, that's kind of the situation on the election. Now for the moment. Um, on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, might do a little update on that while I'm on here. Uh, I think everybody's going on about the amount of square kilometers they've taken and all this, but I would point out one thing. The area that they're really going into, they're nowhere near the city of Kursk itself. They're in an area that's kind of rural, basically. There's a whole bunch of small villages, basically, and a lot of, kind of country between them. And so, since they run into an area where there was very minimal Russian forces when they first invaded, uh, you could just drive down the road with 5 or 6 armored vehicles, and as long as a drone or aircraft don't catch you, you can go quite a ways, and who's there to stop you, really, initially. But the problem is going to be, now that the Russians are bringing large numbers of troops into the area. Yes, there'll be some gaps. There's this one little place where it looks like they've surged ahead, maybe 10, I don't know what, 10 kilometers or something further than their general line. But I wonder how secure that is, because you have to consider some of the other areas where you've seen these battles throughout the war. A lot of these are taking place in much more urbanized areas with large apartment complexes and industrial buildings, and those provide good places that have fortifications. And so it becomes very tedious and high casualty to battle through those things. But these small villages, I mean, you're basically talking one or most two-story, wooden houses. So I'm sorry for the former homeowners, but we know what's going to happen there. But basically, I think they aren't going to be that hard to retake once enough troops get in position to do it. And the Ukrainians are going to have to bring supplies across the border, which there'll probably be Russian airstrikes and using this glide bombs to hit targets on inside. Um, so we'll see how that plays out. That it's and the rest of the war, of course, it's going on pretty much like normal. I think there has been some discussion: will they have to pull units from those areas to deal with the northern front? But I think there's quite a few troops there anyhow that were probably going to launch a fall offensive, and they got preempted. But so we'll see how that plays out. But that's kind of my current take on it. But for the moment, it'll be fluid for a few more days until they kind of get a true front line in place. And there are possibilities of other incursions that may be disruptive. We'll see how that goes. But ultimately, I think this is kind of another example of the Ukrainians playing a PR war rather than a strategic war. So anyway, that's kind of that. I'll, of course, be wrapping this up, and I'll be posting this both on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. So that'll be all for this time.